In this series, I discuss the 10 most highly transferred in FPL players for the upcoming game week and whether you should consider buying or avoiding them. Coming in at number 10 this week with just over 50,000 transfers in is Jurrien Timber. The Arsenal right-back has kept 4 clean sheets in a row and registered 29 FPL points across those matches. Whilst Timber has shone at the start of the season, in recent game weeks, the spotlight has definitely shifted over to Gabriel, who seems to be offering far more in terms of attacking threat. Timber is without a shadow of a doubt a decent player to hold on to at the moment, but should you be making moves to bring him in if you don't already own him? My answer to that question is a hesitant yes. Even though Arsenal have some tough upcoming fixtures, their defence is so elite that I'm confident Timber will continue ticking along nicely with points. The Arsenal keeper David Raya joins the list next with just shy of 70,000 transfers in. I've heard a number of people saying that having Raya in your team takes up a valuable third spot from the Gunners, which could be better utilised by having another outfield player. And to that, I both agree and disagree. Apart from Gabriel, I honestly don't think there's a Gunners asset that we absolutely need to be targeting for our teams. And by having the goalkeeper spot filled up by someone who's likely to guarantee you 6 points each week gives you a lot of peace of mind. However, transfers in FPL are valuable, and I wouldn't make one to bring Raya in. I just don't think there's a high enough upside, especially given his price. So all in all, he's a hold if you have him, but an avoid if you don't. Wow, Danny Welbeck has really set the world alight with his performances over the past few weeks, and it's no surprise that he's on the radar for a number of FPL managers ahead of game week 11. The Brighton forward has scored 6 goals over his last 5 league matches, and when you look at the next 5 games for the Seagulls, you wouldn't put it past him to improve on that record. Palace away this coming week will no doubt be a tough test, but given the lack of forward options in the game currently, I think that Welbeck could become a very rewarding addition to your squad. The time I'd probably start to become less bullish on him is when the fixture schedule starts to become more congested in around a month or so's time. Marc Guéhi impressed once again against Brentford last week, returning 10 FPL points. The Palace defender has now picked up 1 goal, 3 assists and 4 clean sheets across the first 10 game weeks. And what's perhaps more impressive is the fact that he's faced the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea and Bournemouth across those games. When considering a defender from the Eagles, you'd assume that the points would be fairly evenly shared across the board, but the fact is that Guéhi has now scored 20 points more than Richards and Mitchell, so you can see how it makes a significant difference in who you decide to back. He's hit the DEFCON threshold in 5 of his last 6 league matches, and given Palace's upcoming fixture run, I think that makes him a very desirable pick moving forwards. After being transferred out by an enormous 1.6 million FPL managers ahead of game week 10, which included myself, João Pedro has swiftly made a return to people's line of thinking, having been brought in by almost 100,000 managers this week. One thing I think we always have to remember is that FPL is a very dynamic game where the state of play can change so quickly, and it's all about being able to be the first to anticipate where the future points will come from. I think if you're considering João Pedro this week, it's a fairly luxury move to make, and one that I honestly don't think will pay off in the long run. Tottenham looked all over the place defensively against Chelsea, and there's no way that I expect Wolves and Burnley to offer up nearly as much space for the Brazilian to get his shots away. We're now entering the top half of the list, and in at number 5 is Bryan Mbeumo, who's been transferred in by 112,000 FPL managers. I brought Mbeumo into my own FPL team last week, and in my team selection video, I mentioned that I thought him, Fernandes and Cunha would probably end up scoring a similar number of points across the season. However, I do prefer him marginally to Cunha, mainly due to him having a better injury record, and the fact that he seems guaranteed to start and play the full 90 minutes. Mbeumo also takes the set pieces that favour a left-footed player, and I also wouldn't rule out him taking a penalty at some point, especially if Fernandes were to miss the next one. With a great run of upcoming fixtures from an attacking point of view, Mbeumo has to be a buy. Moises Caicedo makes the top 10 again this week following his 10-pointer versus Spurs. The Chelsea midfielder has now registered 3 goals and an assist across the first 10 Premier League matches. On top of this, he's also hit the DEFCON threshold on 50% of occasions, and he's managed to pick up a total of 9 bonus points. There's definitely been a shift in FPL this season, where players like Caicedo, Rice, Gravenberch and João Paulinho have all managed to score well, despite being defensive midfield options. Because these players all make so many interceptions during a game, they're massively favoured by the FPL bonus point system. So when they do occasionally pick up an attacking return, they're likely to score very highly. I just feel like Caicedo can't keep up the returns that he's been producing, and for that reason, I think he's an avoid. One player who definitely isn't an avoid, however, is Gabriel, who's now returned an extraordinary 55 points across the past 5 game weeks, and massively punished all the FPL managers who have decided to back against him. The Arsenal centre-back really is a powerhouse in the game at the moment, as alongside looking hugely unlikely to concede, he's also providing so much aerial threat from set pieces. And when the balls in are as good as they've been recently, it's no wonder as to why he's been on red-hot form. The only negative, I suppose, is Arsenal's next 5 fixtures, as any of those teams are definitely capable of scoring on their day. But honestly, that still wouldn't put me off going for the Brazilian. I also think that 6.6 million is still a very generous price to pay for somebody who's outscoring most of the premiums in the game. Making second on the list this week is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting players to discuss, Declan Rice, who's been brought in by over 200,000 fantasy managers. Averaging over 6 points per game week since the season began, Rice is someone who seriously has to come into our line of thinking. The Arsenal midfielder is kind of the all-round package in FPL. He can score points from open play in the way of DEFCON, goals and assists, and he can also score points from set pieces including corners and direct free kicks. Rice is definitely a good transfer in my opinion, especially given Arsenal's long-term fixture run. However, is he among the top 3 Arsenal assets in the game at the moment? And honestly, I believe that he is. Making top spot this week with 213,000 transfers in and counting is Jean-Philippe Mateta. Mateta scored at home last week against Brentford and picked up all 3 bonus in the process. And this week he faces a Brighton team that leaks a ton of chances, having conceded on 15 occasions already this season. If you're somebody who's considering going for the big Frenchman for your own team, I wouldn't delay that transfer in, as I think the Eagles could score very heavily this week. Not only that, but they've got 5 appealing upcoming fixtures, and the main thing I like about the Palace forward is that he's usually involved in the goals, whereas other forwards from other sides in the league aren't always as heavily involved in their own team's attack. For me, without a shadow of a doubt, this is a definite 100% transfer in. So that's the top 10 transferred in players ahead of game week 11. Do you agree or disagree with my decisions? Let me know down below in the comments. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out my differential 11 video for game week 11, and as always, best of luck for the upcoming game week.